All right, all right, all right. All right, all right, all right. All right, all right, all right. Let's get ready to go live. All right, all right, all right. Voy, voy, voy in the house. How you doing tonight, amigo? Today, tonight, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are, whoever you are, and whenever you may be receiving this transmission. Welcome back, Wayfarer. I hope you're doing well. Time for another FM radio transmission from the Central Kingdom of the Celestial Dragon, Twilight Zone, Old Peking. Frank Monday coming at you once again like Finnegan. So if you've got a yen to expand your kin, then let's get zen. You and me, baby. Why not? Let's do it one time. I hope y'all good looking sexy people out in Happy Land are doing all right. Just gonna do a little study session from the Abodes of Twilight. Study session with Frank Monday. No yen, huh? Sad. I can appreciate it, but yeah. I'm sorry to hear that. Welcome back, Wizard, Warrior, Wayfarer, Wildcat alike. Hit the like and subscribe. Do all that happy horse shit that makes YouTube's algorithms bark like Pavlov's dog. Because aren't we all just barking for the machine? All right. The machine lies. Check it out. Buymeacoffee.com/Frank Money. A little something in the tip jar goes a long way, baby. Buy me a coffee. Certainly a better way to get it done than on the old YouTubes. All right. I saw a nice little video by Mark Dice. He's using Buy Me a Coffee now. So I'll have to check it out. You'll have to check it out. I want to download this little clip and put it up here as a little advertisement at some point. That'd be funny. That'd be fun stuff. Fun stuff indeed. How's all the sound levels coming through tonight? We doing all right? Give me the feedback loop. Looking good, sounding good, feeling good, doing good. Good magic. I can appreciate it. Let's roll that Frank Monday intro one time while I get a sip of my hot coffee. One of those old Frank Monday productions coming at ya.
Okay guys, our next comedian is a bit of a treat, to be honest. It is a bit of a treat. He's been away for 3 years. He is now back from the dead. Well, America. Give a big round of applause for Frank Monday.
Appreciate that shit. Nick's a good man. You know what that's like, being a good man. It's tough in a fucking city like this, though. You know, nobody gives a fuck. They're like, God damn, that's some crazy shit. Motherfucker wearing high heels and shit. Looking good, too, huh? Yeah, you guys like that. That's alright. It's okay to fall down occasionally. I do that sometimes. Alright, being back in the Jing is pretty fucking nerve-wracking. You know, performing for 4 minutes straight. The only other time I get this anxious when I gotta perform for 4 minutes straight is when I gotta make love to my wife.
Onion ring. Yeah, they're all right.
Hey, be watching for the Star Wars blog Rebellion coming out in December. You'll love it. It's follow-up to the award-winning Generations. Oh yeah. There you go, Frank.
Here's my burger. All right. There it is there. So Voy said that his, Voy, good to see you again, man. Welcome back. Thanks for stopping by, man. I appreciate you tuning in and chiming in and doing all that happy horse shit that makes YouTube function correctly, though. I think it's kind of beyond saving, right? You either got it or you don't. And here at FMO Radio, we definitely got it, man. We got a lot going on. Voy in the chat room, in the ideas room, and it's not even loading for me right now. I wonder why. The last comment I could see on my StreamYard is, "Do you wear skirts now?" And I'm like, "No, I don't." But you like my shirt? Yeah. I think you're talking about the thumbnail, right, on the video. Nice little thumbnail of me as an alien, or at least an alien wearing a Frank Monday shirt, right? Why just immediately assume that that's me? That's just some random alien that picked up a Frank Monday shirt at the local thrift shop, I would imagine. Yeah, so he says in the chitter chatter box, guys, make sure you keep it squeaky clean in the chat box tonight with wishy-washy dish soap. Keeps your balls and bowls squeaky clean. You can pick up a 5-pound box of wishy-washy at Thompson's 5 and Dime. You get a 20% discount coupon in your mailer. If you go over to buymecoffee.com/Frank Money, put a little something in the tip jar, that will entitle you to a weekly 20% discount coupon on that old wishy-washy dish soap. It comes in the zesty lemon scent or the soothing lavender. So pick up a 5-pound box for yourself or a loved one. Get it at Thompson's 5 and Dime. Wishy-washy dish soap in the 5-pound box. Yeah, that'll help. That'll help keep the chitter chatter box squeaky clean. I can appreciate it. I think you can too. Wishy-washy. Best dish soap in the business. Comes with a complimentary wishy-washy dishcloth. Make sure you get a box. Do it now. Get out there and get a box of that old wishy-washy. Yeah, so I'm sorry to hear that, Voy. I don't know what happened. What'd you do wrong, man? What'd you do right? I guess they gunning for you, baby. Yeah, like I said, you got to keep it squeaky clean with wishy-washy. That way you won't get in trouble. So what we're doing today, we're going to do some studies. We're going to do some prayers. We're going to do some meditation. We're going to be examining a comparative study of Carlos Castaneda's ideas on the first, second, and third attention in reference to me applying them to Chinese internal Taoism. And the 3 Dantians as I'm teaching them in my system, right? The infernal Dantian down at the bottom, the terrestrial Dantian at the middle, and then the celestial Dantian in the head region, third eye region, right? So the Chinese system is very, very easy to understand. You've got 3 Dantians. One directly connects with the earth and the infernal realms below. And then the one at the heart center directly connects with humanity. And it would be helpful at this point. Let me do this real quick. It would be helpful at this point if I if I turn on the camera for a moment. Oh my God! Look at Frank Monday. Yeah, so it would be helpful if I stand up. The lower Dantian's here, just below the belly button, the navel region, and the symbol you make is like this. So that's a triangle pointing down to the earth, right? And then the center Dantian is here, and it reaches out to humanity, all right, your brothers and sisters. And then the third Dantian is here, and it's a triangle pointing up. All right, so you see how that naturally occurs? The earth Dantian, the center Dantian, all right, the terrestrial, and then the celestial Dantian. So now you got it, right? You get it, got it, good. Old Frank Monday's having a hair day, huh? Need to get my wig on. Yeah, so we're going to be looking at the ideas of... Is that noisy? Every time I bang that fucking microphone down on the table. We're going to be looking at the ideas of studying the idea of language as a reality code and what that means, right? Like the core not merely describe reality, it actively shapes and reinforces the shaping of and forming of the neurological pathways in the brain. Yeah. So if you've studied language and memory, you know that through the linguistic encoding, and this probably worked better in ancient times before we did a lot of writing, or when people didn't do as much writing, they used memory palaces, right? And so to reconnect with those ideas, it's the frequency of the endeavor to do that thing. So language can influence these emotional states, behavioral patterns, and your perceived reality, right? If you're at all familiar with the RAS, or reticular activating system, what you think you're going to see, you're often going to see. And that's how we grow up in the world, and we're trained to see in shapes and colors and stuff through kindergarten. And then those things become the largest looming factors in our reality. Whereas the things we're indoctrinated away from seeing, like spiritual entities and subtle energy, those things are kind of trained out of us because they're connected with the more childlike mind, right? The pure, unhewn stone in the Taoist literature, they refer to it as like an unhewn stone, like before it's carved or formed into a block, or like a uncarved wood, right? This natural, unmolested state, so to speak. So through chipping and carving and rubbing and grinding and polishing, we put things into what's considered to be like a post-heaven state, right? Like an educated, ordered, the realm of man. And so you fluctuate between those, and the idea of the Taoist path is to return to the unformed, unmolested, pre-heaven state of your being. Repeated language functions like executable code that reinforces how individuals think, feel, and act, right? Or how the thoughts that go through their minds, and the words that come out of their mouths, and then the things that they actually do in the world. And so we'll take into consideration energy and energy limitations in exploring these things through your Dantian. So the lower Dantian, which I refer to as the infernal Dantian, corresponds with the super scientific materialistic world and its manifestation around us, right? And then the center Dantian, the terrestrial one, would be the realm of the mind of man and its connection with other human beings. And so it's one of the most beneficial ones to cultivate throughout life, is that center Dantian, that heart energy. What in esoteric Christianity they refer to as the Christ consciousness. And then the celestial Dantian, it's above that, right? It's above even mentation, and it's within the realm of supersensual perception and the heavenly eyes. So the eyes themselves would connect with the terrestrial sphere mostly. But it's when you start to move beyond that and do astral work and neuro-linguistic programming your own mind, metacognition, that you start to reach to these other than conscious states and non-linear thinking and non-Euclidean spaces, right? So what we're looking for is, the direct connection to divine or source energy. So one way to compare this is with mechanized things like the computer. We have some good analogies in the age of the computer. So language is similar to the software, right? And then the brain and its nervous system would be more akin to the hardware of the thing, right? So you have a computer with all of its hardware, right? The firmware. And then we've got the wetware, the software, the actual code running through the thing. Now, this code is going to take different levels of integration into your being. There's going to be code that arises from your essential physical structure, like your DNA as we know it, and like your molecular level, and the operation of all of the physical manifestations of the being. The internal organs create emotion, right? The brain filters and processes cognition. And so there's a lot of different analogies that interact and integrate here. The basic idea is that language is an ancient technology that probably, in all likelihood, predates man and arose from, according to all historic accounts, right, mythical accounts, it didn't arise. We didn't put it together like homosexuals. What are you talking about in there, boy? It didn't arise piece by piece or piecemeal, and it wasn't put together like monkeys playing with sticks and rocks in the dirt. It just arose fully formed. And in fact, the more ancient the languages, they seem to be the more advanced. So we go from like super advanced Egyptian hieroglyphics and cuneiform and ancient Shang dynasty Chinese from like we're talking like 8 to 10,000 years ago. We had these super advanced languages, and then there was a great diluvian flood, and then we kind of started over trying to piece all that back together. So obviously the technology and timeline of man is not a linear progression, right? It's something that's occurred in a cyclical fashion. So, and it probably changes with each great age of people. And so we're kind of looking back, trying to remember, right? The ancient cultures, they treated language as a tool for transformation rather than just passive communication. So invocations and mantras, mantras, of course, mantra and sutra, I forget. I shouldn't veer off too much into language I'm unfamiliar with, but invocation and evocation and talismanic magic symbology was directly connected with the spiritual evolution of the human being. What the Chung Ho Xia are you trying to pull on me now? Right, yeah. Well, that's the problem. You wind up in you wind up in Vietnamese restaurants that are claiming to be China Panda, right? And it turns out they're not. They're from Southeast Asia, and they're trying to put pineapple in your fried rice, and you're like, why my fried rice got pineapple? That doesn't seem very Chinese. Why your egg roll so small, right? And they're like, well, we're not Chinese, but China is not just China. It's also Vietnamese. So it's a Vietnamese egg roll, so tiny. And then the Chinese guy down the block, he's like, what you doing going over there, man? You come over here with the Chinese egg roll, big egg roll. We got a big egg roll. So some of the evidence that connects us to modern magic in language is like the word grammar, right? Gematria comes from grimoire or book of magic. And when we hear in the ancient biblical texts about them using the sword, right? The pen is mightier than the sword, but the sword of Moses, the sword of Solomon, it was referencing a grimoire, a book of magic. And so the sword action was the crystallized sword of intent and the mind, right? Spelling. We spell words. It's symbolic of binding, right? So the energy is liquid in its unformed state. It's pre-heaven form. And then as we condense it into sigils and symbols and languages, it becomes stabilized. So naming and identifying things is a way to trap them. It's a form of spell binding, right? Ensorceling it into the prime material plane. And this takes many shapes, yeah? So I was experiencing this just the other day when I was in a philosophical conversation with some fellas. I think we were over at TML, and I was just listening most of the time and observing. And a lot of the language that people use codifies and traps them within the box of that spelling. And so there's these magical incantations that are being cast upon the self through language that are trapping people into the fixed state of the prime material plane, right? Being stuck in Malkut, as it were, if you're familiar at all with Kabbalistic language. I know, right? Boy, you gonna get up here, boy? You want to come up here and chat with me? It's so funny. Why are you so funny? When you translate Voyage manuscript, you talk to me about magic. Naming and identifying. So labels compress the fluid experience into fixed identity states, right? Like you see a banana and you say egg roll, and then suddenly the banana becomes an egg roll, right? And you're like, what the fuck? I just transmuted a tropical fruit into a civilized, advanced, culturally traditional type of, like an egg roll. Think about what's in an egg roll. You've got the grain and flour that produces the skin with egg and oil. And then that type of skin has to be produced in a very particular way so that when it deep fries it, it gets that golden sheen, and it's just a thing of perfection. Then the cabbage is chopped and pounded and somewhat it's cabbage and carrot and celery sometimes, and maybe sliced shiitake, dried mushrooms, and all of that goes through an immense amount of processing. Oftentimes there's ground pork in it, right? If you want traditional Chinese egg rolls, and then there's some 5-spice powder and salt and pepper, probably a little MSG, right? So you're thinking about like probably in the range of like 20 or so ingredients that are going into the egg roll, right? Whereas the banana is just one thing. It's just a banana. And so you and then you roll it up, and you gotta know how to make it right in order to get a damn good egg roll. I mean, I know my egg rolls, and it's not like a Mexican burrito, but a deep fried burrito might be somewhere along the same lines. Anyway. So where did that tangent come from? But then you label it that thing, and it is that thing, right? So if you say, I'm a Christian, then suddenly you're confined to the box of idolizing and engaging in the idolatry of singular dogmatic doctrines and ideas that may in fact not serve you, because those are just the past, right? It's the records that ancient sages and mages and all different kinds of people, priests and parishes, kept as record books. But you got to be the living truth as well. And so you, the individual practitioner, me, you, the other guy, we all need to be engaged in that activity of evolving ourselves spiritually through the study and interaction with the material, right? And we got to keep updating it. What the fuck? Jesus came along, he updated shit. It was like, time for an update. So, for example, if we use the example like I'm anxious, right? That converts the temporary feeling of anxiety into a stable self-definition, right? So just naming the thing can do that. You got to be wary of naming. So you can replace identity statements with process statements as an easy fix to this, right? I'm experiencing some anxiety at this time. Right? Rather than saying, I'm angry, right? In your mind even. So the mind is the first command center. We get into the ideas of the 7 basic Kabbalistic principles, right? That the mind is all, the all is mind, the universe is mental. Then we can see that this has a direct correlation with these ideas. Yeah, I see you out there, Voy. You're the only one here. That's okay, though. I can appreciate it. I mean, if you want to pour melted butter over, like butter dripping off a hot biscuit, it's all you ever want. It's all you ever need, baby. So that all mind idea, that language determines perceptual resolution, and naming of the things brings those about. The application here is that linguistic relativity, right? Expanding emotional vocabulary increases emotional awareness. So to expand cognitive vocabulary, spiritual vocabulary, it expands that awareness, right? You can't perceive a shen, right? A fairy, a spirit, unless you know some of the language of the thing, right? Otherwise, it'll just be blocked off to that part of your mind. People discount so easily with the idea of belief. I believe in this, that, or the other thing, but belief is a tool. And so you can start with the belief, but you should make it malleable. So and refine this language, right? I perceive certain things, or certain things seem to be more persistent than others, but then there's always that other thing, right? Yeah, I'll read you some poetry later, Voy. We got a little bit of homework to get through here tonight. I don't know if you know this or not, but I use these archival audio transmissions to go back and listen to myself go through the material, so that I can figure out how I presented it well and how I didn't do as well in presenting it. And that way, it also gives me the reinforcement of like an audiobook format to listen to it. So that's really the main purpose here. You can think of vocabulary as the pixels of perception, right? So if we stick with the computer analogy, all of that code running behind the screen is also the code of the mind and how you perceive the world, right? When you look out at your hands and you see, oh my God, there are my hands, there are my fingers, right? Hold them up in front of you right now and look at the backs of them, you know, and if you put the thumbs together and the fingers splayed fan-like out in front of you, it's like you're casting a very powerful magic spell. And then if you turn those around and curl your fingers over with the palms in front of you, and then you can see your nails and your palms and all the lines, all that map work on your hands, right? You think, wow, that's really something. Okay, so now you've brought your attention to the hands. And in Chinese Kung Fu, right, in the magic of the Orient, we say Yi Dao, Qi Dao, Xue Xing. Or when I put my E, when I look at my hand, I have a hand, right? I am the hand. I'm moving the hand. And then think about the amount of neurons and all the connection of things firing through the nervous system just to wiggle the fingers. Yeah, it's kind of a good fun thing. You need to Daju Do. I don't know what Daju Do is. Then your chi comes into your hands, right? And when the chi is in the hands, you can use it for different things. You can use it for calligraphy. You can use it for bone setting. You can use it for martial arts. You can use it to cook yourself a good dinner, right? But one of the main practices here, I would imagine, is being mindful of doing those things, right? Like I open the Chinese tin with the beautiful young lady on it, and inside are some really nice rolled smokes, right? Pre-rolls, and they got a delicious like flavor on them for some reason. These things are like luxury smokes that someone gave me for the holidays, because in Chinese culture they like to give away wine and smokes and mooncakes and packets full of money and stuff all around the time of the Chinese New Year, which is really great fun. One of the wonderful things I love about their culture. But yeah, I wound up with this I don't know, like several cartons of really, really, like, you know, superior quality tobacco. Roll them up, light them up, smoke them up, yum. So I'm lighting one of those up. But it's, you know, a part of the whole process. Yeah, that's why, like, I think a lot of Westerners, or folks in the Western world these days, will roll their own smokes, because it really gets you involved in the Tao of the thing, right? And that's what we're always seeking in mysticism, is being in tune with the universal beat, the universal pulse of things. All right, so where do we get here? We get to part 3 of this is neuroscience and biology. Speech activates motor regions of the brain, reinforcing neural circuits through repetition. The key principle here are Hebb's law that neurons that fire together wire together, right? So again, we're thinking of those associative centers in the brain. You know, when you hear the word chi, what do you think of, right? Sometimes it's fun to use a foreign language to start relearning about all of those neural connections and neural pathways and how they really are instrumental in organizing your worldview and your paradigm. Yeah, we're already into part 3. Part 1 was my core thesis here and memory anchors. Part 2 was naming and identifying formation. And then part 3 is neuroscience and biology. They're all pretty quick. This is just an abridged list of things I've been working on recently. So chronic negative language elevates cortisol and causes one to age. And it unravels your telomeres and your DNA structure, and you start to age rapidly. I figured this kind of thing out at a very, very young age, and I thought, hey, people talk about death and they try to program you, and they have the memento mori in the skull, and you know, they would try to get you involved in the ritual of funeral and stuff like that. I thought if you could figure it out and just start telling yourself, I'm not going to grow old, and then just pound that into your brain, right? And anytime negative self-talk arises in the mind, right, you just eliminate it, and it becomes easier and easier, right? It's an ongoing thing, though. It's cyclical, right? Especially during winter, people will suffer from seasonal affective disorder, right? Sad. People get sad, and it's not a good thing. I had some wonderful fruit that came through. It was mango and pineapple and strawberries and blueberries and all this different, like these fruit medleys that my wife picked up at the local grocery, right? Frozen in a frozen state. And I had kind of gotten into a funk over the last couple of a few days, about a week long, because I've been on a holiday and I was sleeping in and just kind of lazing about, being lethargic. And after just one glass of this fruit medley with like some punch, like it was so invigorating, my mood immediately elevated. Now, we wouldn't be able to do that because typically those things aren't available except for during they're seasonal. So it was kind of out of season to do that, but it gave me the pep. It brought the pep back into my step, the jelly in my donut, and the lead in my pencil like I needed, right? So positive framing increases the dopamine and oxytocin activity in the brain. And so every time you rewrite negative self-talk with positive framing and positive self-talk, right? And not just being a diehard optimist, but really getting in there at the neural level, right? Then it starts to deepen into the mind. This it becomes second nature, right? So you're deliberately responsive so that your automatic reactions, your autonomous, right, the other than conscious reactions are in line with the type of mentality that you want to build. Yeah. So like training Kung Fu, you do the form, the fist form or whatever, you do it once, you've got it at a very superficial level. It can be forgotten quite easily, in fact, right? Then you do it for a couple of months and you're getting better at it. You can do it. It's second nature. You don't really have to think about it anymore. Then you've been doing those same forms 10,000 times for 10 years. Your body already knows it so well that chances are you'll never forget it throughout your entire life, right? So we think that mastery through the Kung Fu, through the Gongs, as we call them in China, right? Gong Fu means work, achievement. When you've done the work, which we say is 10,000 repetitions of a single thing, right? A single stroke of the pen, a flute song you've played 10,000 times, a sword form you've done 10,000 times, or an invocation you've done 10,000 times. Now it has merged with the Tao, right? It's become a part of the way. Heaven and earth are the spontaneous manifestations of the subtle, wondrous, universal law. This invocation I've done over 10,000 times, right? If you do it once a day, how long is it going to take you to get your 10,000 reps in? It takes 27 years, 3 1/3 months. That's how long it takes if you're going to do it 10,000 times. So why not do it 3 times a day and shorten that equation to about 10 years? So even if you're doing it 3 times a day, it's still going to take you a decade to master any given gong, right? Any given gong fu. So yeah, that's kind of a thing, all right? So many people fall into this miasma and static of the ordinary prosaic world, right? That daily torture of the commonplace, that they get overwhelmed by other people's minds and the mind of the collective degeneration of society, which, you know, as practitioners, we don't want to be too closely involved with that, right? Yeah, always got to start over. It's always back to the beginning. That's right. The fundamentals, beginner stuff. I'm a lifelong neophyte. I'm always wearing the white sash of the beginner, right? The masters are going to stand on the mountain and pontificate from their soapbox, whereas Frank Money's going to be down in the dirt with the regular, ordinary laborers, fucking swinging a hammer and getting shit done. So when you track repeated phrases you use daily and write them down, confess to yourself through language, you can get some of that down, and you can think about something you said in your mind, right? Like, whatever it is, I'm not good enough, right? Something like that. You might say that, or maybe I'm not handsome enough, or I'm not confident enough, or whatever it is, and write that down and then rephrase it, right? Respell it. I'm not good enough, right? And then you cross that out and say, who the fuck said that? That wasn't even me. That's not something that 3,000 times a day. That's right. You master it in 3 days. And you get there 10,000 times quicker. Well, it's not about quickness necessarily, right? But I see what you're saying there. Right? Or the mind deviates into something like, right? Will there be enough money for it? Will there be enough, right? Is there going to be enough wine for the party? Is there going to be enough money for the future? Any of those types of things, then you just refocus those into more positive types of affirmation. You know, that's not me. That's not something I said. That's something the worrying devil said, right? Whereas the Lord provides, and you'll always be provided for. So how could you rewrite the I'm not good enough? You just simply state it in the positive, right? And you don't even have to make it that way. You could say, I'll rise to the challenge. I'll rise to the challenge, all right? And whether I succeed or fail, I'll learn from the interaction. And so, you know, again, this is the kind of thing I figured out when I was a kid, you know, young man, and reinforced it over the last, 40 years, 30, 40 years. I've been doing these. I've been practicing and living this living truth, the living truth of the Tao. So to summarize, right, using your own words is how you can coalesce, right, to codify this thing for yourself. Sounds create structural patterns in matter, right? We know of this. This is a science called cymatics. And there are greater vibrations and frequencies at play from the stars and the earth formations and flowing water and gases moving upon the firmament, right? And all of these are giving real solid structure to the things around us, right? The script uses this phenomenon metaphorically because internal speech organizes emotional and physical states. Internal creativity organizes the world of man, right? You look around your room. Who built the building you're in, right? Where did it come from? It came from an idea. It came from the imaginative. It was as above, so below. It was from the celestial Dantian, the mind of man, that was receiving the code, right, from the universal expression, and then downloading it directly into our material plane so that it could benefit not just the single individual, but lifetimes of individuals to utilize those spaces. So it's a very powerful thing, especially when we look just a couple of centuries back at the dynamic integrated structures that our ancestors built, far more beautiful and enduring than the ones that are, that are being built today. And so there's definitely something to it, right? These claims are not simply metaphorical, but they're empirically causal, right? We see them playing out in all the realms of human endeavor through agriculture and technology, manufacturing, all forms of the productive activities of man to service humanity in general, right? And at the individual level, through artistic endeavors, intellectual endeavors. Always distinguish between metaphor and the evidence, the scientific evidence. You can't be fantasy. No, there's no place for fantasy to enter into the mind here, because it's a real phenomena that's playing out. Magic is the operating system, the language of the cosmos. Another way to put this into practical application is the semantic pause. So pause for a few moments, right? Take a deep breath. Hold it for 3, 2, 1, and then relax. And do that every time that you need to respond to internal dialogue. Or external stimuli from other people's dialogue. We see in these online spaces that oftentimes the only videos that get a lot of views are the ones that have been highly edited to remove all kinds of silent points. But that's not at all human, is it? In natural, genuine, gentle human canter, we speak quietly oftentimes to each other, especially in civilized companionship, not including my wife and my children, right? They're taking their time to civilize. And yet maintain flexibility, malleability in one's ideas, right? There's time to change. You can relabel things like oftentimes this always baffled me. I'll not mention exactly who, but there was a person in my life that we lived in close proximity to each other, right, within the same dwelling. And this person always said, I gotta go to work today. I gotta leave in 10 minutes. I gotta go to work. And they were like playing the victim of having to work an ordinary day-to-day job. And it offended my sensibilities, because my attitude the start of the week, every Monday morning, it's like, raw, yeah, I got the opportunity to go to work. I get to go to work and I get to interact with all these, wonderful people and get some really great food, or I get to go to school and hang out with my homies or whatever and learn and study. And so for me, it was always a get to, and I had a kind of a childlike enthusiasm and excitement to intercourse with these systems. I get to practice my kung fu, I got 30 minutes of free time. I can knock out, all 5 elements, and Wu Fu Sashi San and San Guan Chen, and maybe I can do some Baso Ba Shi and Mei Hua Tui, and however much time I had. And the more I did, the more I could do, and the more invigorated I was by life. And I wondered why certain people have certain attitudes like that, right? Like sitting around on your ass all day doing nothing is preferable to going out and earning a living and interacting and being of service to the world. So that somehow baffled me. Again, as a very young man, I was having these realizations. And I chose not to align myself or be polluted by that type of thing. You know, when a person like that walks out the room, I'm throwing up, you know, the cross of David and saying, you know, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Get behind me, Satan. So yeah, you got to replace that language. You got to replace that threat language with more descriptive language, right? You got to replace the I have to. You don't have to do anything. You could hold your breath until it's game over. You could jump out the fucking window, right? You don't have to go to work. You have the opportunity to go and be a part of the economy and provide greater value for yourself in the world, right? So anyway, re-encoding those things. And try to re-encode every day. Try to, you know, find a little something that, you know, may be a negative aspect of your character, your persona, and that can be refined and polished smooth again, because we start in the idea of the thing in a very pure and genuine sense. And it's only after, you know, getting your dick knocked in the dirt so many times that you start to develop this sort of cynicism and suspicion of human endeavor. And people out there, they think that 90% of the world is out to get them, and some of them are. But as long as people harbor that darkness as a mentality and harbor that darkness in their interactions with their fellow man, then that's always what it's going to be. You know, we got to rewrite that script. We got to rewrite that script. We got to try to ask the big questions. Where does metaphor replace the, you know, the sciences? Where can we replace these things? Does language actually shape reality, or just does it reflect existing cognition? Are there any ethical risks that arrive from having linguistic determinism? And which practices are going to root you into a better life and a better mindset? So basically, language functions as a cognitive and emotional control system. It shapes the perception of identity and behavior and thought through neurological reinforcement. While drawing from linguistics, neuroscience, and physics, and sometimes metaphorically, it emphasizes conscious language is used as a tool for personal agency and growth. Now, that's on the linguistic side of things, right? But it's not enough to grow psychologically. And my headset's running out of power, man. I'm gonna have to reorganize this. All right, guys. Here in the second half, I'm gonna. Wonder why all my things are. The second half here of the show, guys, I'm gonna take a little bit of a breather, refresh my cup of joe. I'm gonna play the Invocation of Tahuti. We're gonna offer some music for the people out there. We got that Dweller of the Dark. We're gonna listen to a couple of those songs, and we're gonna get ready for the second half, which is I'm gonna be going through this PDF that I compiled for my researches into Carlos Castaneda and what I'm starting to call the Rastafarian conversation model, the RCM, the Rastafarian conversation model. I got quite a few slides here. I think I got about 20 slides. And so we're going to go through the basics, which we covered on the last show. Then we're going to get into his ideas of the first attention, the second attention, and the third attention, and then corresponding those with pathworking on the Tree of Life, going from Malkuth to Yasad up to Tifereth. And we're going to compare those ideas of Don Juan's sorcerer with the Hermetic magician and see if we can get to a deeper understanding of the material that he offered us in his series of books. I believe there was 12, I think, in the full series of Don Juan, the Sorcerer and the Magician. So really good stuff. It's going to be good magic, but in order to get it fired off in the right direction, we're going to have to let Israel Regardi lead us through the Invocation of Tahuti. Before we do that, that's about a 6-minute video. I'm going to remind everybody, right? to hit the like button, like and subscribe, whether you're joining now or in the future, or you might even be referencing it from the past of my future past. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. And then, of course, check me out on buymeacoffee.com/Frank Monday. That would be a blessed thing, Wayfarer. Join your old Grand Wizard of the Esoteric Order of Dagon, Frank Monday, as he brings real magic back into the world. So, beloved Wayfarer, with no further ado, Israel Regardi and the Invocation of Thoth. Enjoy.
Invocation of Thoth. Procul, o procul esti profani, ar lasti ampeda. In the name of the mighty and terrible one, I proclaim that I have banished the shells unto their habitations. I invoke Tahuti, the Lord of wisdom and of utterance, the God that cometh forth from the veil. O thou majesty of the Godhead, wisdom-crowned Tahuti, Lord of the gates of the universe, thee I invoke. O thou of the ibis head, thee I invoke. Thou who wieldest the wand of double power, thee I invoke. Thou who bearest in thy left hand the rose and cross of light and life, thee I invoke. Thou whose head is as an emerald, and thy nemes as the night sky blue, thee I invoke. Thou whose skin is of flaming orange as though it burned in a furnace, thee I invoke. Behold, I am yesterday, today, and the brother of tomorrow. I am born again and again. Mine is the unseen force whereof the gods are sprung, which is as life unto the dwellers in the watchtowers of the universe. I am the charioteer of the east, lord of the past and of the future. I see by mine own inward light, Lord of resurrection, who cometh forth from the dusk, and my birth is from the house of death. O ye two divine hawks upon your pinnacles, who keep watch over the universe, ye who company the bier to the house of rest, who pilot the ship of wrong, ever advancing onwards the heights of heaven, Lord of the shrine which standeth in the center of the earth. Behold, he is in me, and I in him. Mine is the radiance wherein Ptah floateth over the firmament. I travel upon high. I tread upon the firmament of new. I raise up flashing flame with the lightning of mine eye, ever rushing on in the splendor of the daily glorified Ra, giving my life to the dwellers of earth. If I say, come up upon the mountains, the celestial waters shall flow at my word. For I am Ra incarnate, Kefra, created in the flesh. I am the eidolon of my father Tamu, Lord of the city of the sun. The God who commands is in my mouth. The God of wisdom is in my heart. My tongue is the sanctuary of truth, and a God sitteth upon my lips. My word is accomplished every day, and the desire of my heart realizes itself as that of Ptah when he created his works. I am eternal, therefore all things are as my designs, therefore do all things obey my word. Therefore do thou come forth unto me from thine abode in the silence, unutterable wisdom, or light, or power. So, Hermes, Mercury, Odin, by whatever name I call thee, thou art still nameless to eternity. Come thou forth, I say, and aid and guard me in this work of art. Thou, star of the east, that didst conduct the Magi, thou art the same all present in heaven and in hell. Thou that vibratest between the light and the darkness, rising, descending, changing ever, yet ever the same. The sun is thy father, thy mother the moon. The wind hath borne thee in its bosom, and earth hath ever nourished the changeless godhead of thy youth. Come thou forth, I say, come thou forth, and make all spirits subject unto me, so that every spirit of the firmament and of the ether, upon the earth and under the earth, on dry land and in the water, of whirling air and of rushing fire, and every spell and scourge of God the vast one may be obedient unto me.
So it is commanded and confirmed, just so mote it be. Amen. Alright, there it is there. The invocation of Tahuti. So for the next part of this, I'll be hanging around, doing a little studying. About an hour maybe. Yeah. See how y'all good looking sexy people are doing out there in Happy Land. Anybody want to join me? I put the link up there. Feel free for some pithy banter. That's always good fun. And let's set the foundation for what that would look like, right? Through the old Rastafarian conversation model as brought forward by Frank motherfucking Monday. FM radio. Hit the likes and subscribe, guys. Do all those fun things that make the dogs bark. So here we are here. We're going to start off with, not the last page, but page 1, in fact. That was page 15. That's the end of the thing, the end of the document. Yeah, so here we go. There's page 1. Yeah, nice. It's good magic. So we'll set the foundation of the thing with this part of the transmission. And there's the working title. Maybe someone come up with something better, but I think that's pretty as close as you can get to the truth of the thing, right? That's what we're aiming for here with Spiritual Inquiry on FM radio with Frank Monday on your headset. So we'll jump over here to the document and go through the first 5, right? All right, so we're looking at Don Juan Matus in Carlos Castaneda's famous book series on he learned magic from some Yucatan Peninsula sorcerers, all right? And so he said there were rules for spiritual conversation in a conventional sense, very clear about how not to speak when dealing with matters of spirit. So first off, right out of the Tao Te Ching here, 少说话多做事, or speak less and do more, experience more, right? 少说话多做事. Yeah, so a very different thing from like the incantation of the Western language, like 做 is a very particular character. It's a man, and then the symbol for drum, and then a symbol for like movement of a fish, right? So you've got a whole different type of pictographical energy forming that the ancients believe or taught. It's legendary, of course, from mythology, but that the Chinese characters arrived from the cymatic formation of the thing. So the frequency itself created the Chinese word they saw, and they brought that into being through magic, right? From the unseen sphere into the seen sphere. And they did it with things like heating up tortoise shells so that they cracked in a certain way, and then pouring silver into the cracks in the tortoise shells to preserve it. The name of that science, it's cymatics with a C, right? CY. If I can find it real quick. Anyway, I can't. It was in my document. But yeah, so here he repeatedly warned that talking about spirituality too much drains it of power. A true spiritual conversation is grounded in direct experience, not explanations, beliefs, or theories. Okay. Yeah, so I'm taking some notes while I go through this with you guys. So if there's some dead air, it's to be expected. The second one is avoiding self-importance, right? So trying to minimize the expression of. Now, if I am correct in this, I believe the Jungian view of the cognitive function, the spiritual being of man, was divided into 4 areas, right? One was the self or true self, right? The soul, like the soul of the thing. The other was that's masculine, feminine, opposite. So if you're presenting as male in this realm, then you would have an anima or anima, one feminine, one masculine, and that would be the feminine reflection. So for a man, it would be the inner feminine reflection of his being, and then for a woman, the opposite. And then the persona, or the id and the ego, right? The persona, true self, anima, persona, or shadow, and so the persona would include the id and the ego would be the striving function for individuality, and then the id would be the darker side of that, right? The one that causes negative constriction of the other functions. Yeah, so avoiding that, right? Trying to mitigate that influence, or the disintegrating function of the thing. So if there are the 4 great powers, then one of them is disintegration, yeah. Generation, transformation, equilibrium, and then disintegration. The cycles of a thing. Then speaking impeccably. Now there's a really interesting reference to Rudolf Steiner here in when he discussed spiritual science. He said that one thing is, whenever you're engaged in these types of philosophical conversations and spiritual evolution through socializing with other human beings, that your thoughts should be brought to fruition in a timely and concise fashion, just like Don Juan's going to recommend here later on, but that each one should be brought from inception to growth and fruition each time. And that when you're interacting with other beings, you should also allow them to do that and encourage them to do that, and without truncating what they're trying to express. But then at the same time, the person who is expressing, and especially if there's more than one person involved, right, needs to allow for an impeccable, intentional, precise, brief crystallization of that thing each time, and bring it there with as little fanfare as possible. And this is what creates the shift. And when that shift occurs, then there will be harmonization among the frequencies being generated by the participants. So he called this impeccability, saying only what aligns one's energy and purpose. Silence is often more powerful than speech. Meet people of the level of awareness, not belief. Yeah, so, and this is, here's a really nice one, right? Like awareness being brought into the present. And across these electronic mediums, I think that's where the greatest challenge seems to be. Because if you're actually in the room with someone, sitting down across from them and interacting with their person, then these types of etiquettes or civilized behavior would be more, I think, more apparent for most, if not all, maybe. But you won't have to argue beliefs, because you'll be able to see the thing directly and perceive it directly. Like if a few people join together in a spirit of like learning Qigong and practicing Taoism and Kung Fu and stuff like that, even dance, and then you bring an idea into it, like the paranormal or something, a shift into high strangeness, that can occur quite easily if people can be of a malleable and receptive mind. Then you can do it and perceive it directly together, which is a lot more fun, and it's somehow interesting. A spiritual conversation is when two people share attention and presence, not when one tries to convert the other. And that's one of the big tendencies in the Western mind, is that rhetoric and speech of all kinds is seeing the available means of persuasion, right? Available means of persuasion, available means. I believe that was Cicero who said that, or might have been Aristotle, but available means of persuasion. Might have been Plato. I'm writing that down. I should know, but those guys are all kind of jumbled together in my head in propinquity, right? And it's not that important to distinguish among them, in my belief. Use metaphor, story, and paradox. Just get to the meat of the thing, right? Doesn't matter who said it or who said it when. Just if it works, it works. Teachings were often delivered indirectly through stories, riddles, or shocking statements. Yeah, because rational explanations limit perception. The goal was to disrupt ordinary things. Okay, so we covered most of these. We'll move forward quite quickly from here. Now, this is about energy flowing through the conversation and the ideal number of people. Energy flows where attention's balanced. The flow collapses when people try to dominate. So talking too long, explaining, persuading, or performing, the self-importance consumes energy and the flow collapses. This is a very, very important part of the equation right here. I don't think it'll all fit in the chat, but I'll try to, oops. What happened there? The old computer. Yeah, so I'll try to post it in here. It's probably going to take like 2 or 3 messages. Let's see. 2. Yeah, so it took up two parts. Energy flows where attention is balanced. The attention is energy. Conversation, one person dominates. Any of these behaviors will suck the air out of the room, consume the energy, and the flow will collapse. A good exchange feels alive, dynamic, filled with electromagnetic energy, personal alchemy, animal magnetism, right? All of those things are present because attention moves back and forth naturally. This is why one of the things with streaming and not making concise edited videos, I always felt that it's far superior if you have a feedback loop with another person, so that at least it's a dialogue, right? If not an entire triumvirate convergence of multiple folks involved, right? Like some of these chats we see get up to 5 or 10 people, you know. I think that the ideal number is what I've always thought it was. It's 5 plus or minus 2. So I think that the maximum for group like learning and at an organizational level would be 7, and 7 ideas, 7 oscillations, 7 variables, this kind of thing. It's very high level equations. But 5 plus or minus 2 gives you a range of from 3 to 7, right? Like even the lowest level interaction can achieve great things with 3, but 7 is a much more powerful number. So I think 2 is kind of underestimating it a little bit, right? And we'll get back to that. I think that's on the next page, guys. Let me update this. Yeah. So energy flows. And the next one. Number 2, brevity preserves power. Long explanations leak energy. Power is conserved when speech is concise, timed, and necessary. While he never said talk for any given number of minutes, the implication is that once a point is felt rather than understood, speech should stop. Continuing past that point is indulgence. And he went on to reiterate this throughout a couple of his books, I think, where the Yaqui sorcerer, the Yaqui warrior would listen to him recite poetry, and he would say there'd be one powerful stanza maybe, or a couple of lines within a piece of poetry that were the whole point of the thing and where the real energy was. And he said all else was just pretty much indulgence. And I've always felt like that. Very, very good, eloquent things can be summed up very concisely. And so that's important to keep in mind. 2 people, ideal number for awareness. People perform for social standing. Energy disperses into consensus making. It works if there's a good, strong central master in the situation, like we see in these panels oftentimes. If the host has the mojo and the power to manage things effectively at the social level, then it can be a very good interaction. And if the participants are of a mind to do that, right, to keep these things in mind when they approach it, right, that I'm here to avoid self-importance, speak impeccably, not equivocate over beliefs or opinion, and just work through the metaphor of wisdom, right, the stories, and unravel the paradoxes of the supernatural and supersensual, the paranormal, right, the high strangeness. Spiritual conversation should be quiet, sparse, ego-free, grounded in lived experience, and often indirect. All right. Number 4. Silence is a part of the conversation. I think I can drop that banner. Yes, indeed. Silence is a part of the conversation. He emphasizes the real exchange includes pauses, silences, pauses. And I would even say that you can perform ritual. When I did the mercurial meetups, is where there was an esoteric group of us here in Beijing that would meet up. Sometimes twice a month, sometimes less, sometimes more, but we went through a lot of different hermetic texts together, and I did a lot of the homework assignments in it. Some other people brought in other stuff sometimes, but we would meet for a couple of hours every Wednesday, and sometimes it'd go shorter, sometimes it'd go longer, depending. And we would tie up both ends with ritual, right? Have some ritual invocation to begin the thing, and then a process of how we would move through it, and then a ritual invocation to finish it. And it would be integrated with hypnosis sessions, induction sessions, and then discussion as well, encoding of the material, right? The lecture itself, and then the dialogue about it. Kind of hard to bring it online. Like during the great lockdown, they wanted everything to go online in that fashion, but that type of thing I think is more difficult to transfer onto this platform. But it seems to be happening now. It seems to be growing organically in the 5 years since people have been locked down. That's funny to say and think about, huh? Oh. The goal is not understanding, it's alignment. The success of a spiritual conversation isn't clarity or agreement, but a subtle shift in awareness. When that shift occurs, talking naturally ends. And so this is what we'll be getting into next, is the shifting of the assemblage point, or the critical factor, the attention point, and its expansion through the various spheres of the mind. So let's look at that next. But in essence, energy flows best in short, precise exchanges between two people, with silence doing as much work as words. And once the ego, explanation, or audience enters, the energy drains and the conversation becomes ordinary again. Let's see, that's a good quote to repost here. And I think it's of sufficient length that it should only take one. No, it took a little over one. Yeah, so keep the ego and explanation out. Otherwise, it will take the power away from the thing. Okay, so he presents the assemblage point and 3 attentions as ways of describing shifts in perception and awareness, not as beliefs. Okay, whatever. So the assemblage point is what we would call in Hermetics like the magician's will, or the magical intent, right? And I think the magician's will and the magical intent are different. The will is the steady flowing rhythmic energy of the thing, right? When you have high energy levels, then your magical intent can be more more direct and pointed and effective and powerful, and touch on the thing itself, right? Like a finger pointing at the moon that manifests. So you can be malleable in shifting these 3 attentions as well, right? So they would correspond with the 3 Dantians in Tao, and we'll look at that as we go through them, right? Now, the first one, the assemblage point itself, rather than just the attention centers, the elixir fields, right? Could be in the 3rd eye. You could move it down into the lower Dantian. You could keep it at the center Dantian. You could put it out into the hand, right? You can shoot it to the edge of your energy egg, and you can use it and the luminous, the light of the astral, the divine astral light, you can use that to train the etheric to follow those paths. And so when you cast a magical circle and you envision the plasma charge, the light within the mind, vibrating out into the world and creating your sigils as you go around your magical circle, that intention, that E to do that, will bring the chi to those things, and then the life force will be present in them within your energy egg, right? So you're literally like using light of the mind, divine light, the divine spark of the mind, to carve the sigils into your aura. That's your magical circle. Your aura is your magical circle. And then you place the 4 archangels at those points, and of course bring the column of God, right? The Godhead, the force of the All-Father, straight down in through the top of your head and indirectly into Malkuth, right? You realize that you're a part of the lightning flash from heaven, animating this dusty world. You're not the dusty world growing into this crystalline, pure, divine thing that you are, right? That would be backwards. It's you, the light being, coming into the dirt and then manifesting. But that manifestation of you, that's your outer covering, man, of that soul energy generating into this world. And so you have to respect and love and cherish it and nourish it and rest it and train it with Kung Fu, right? And other forms of training. So we'll get into the next page of the document here. Does that look right? Yeah, looks good. So the assemblage point determines what world you experience or what tunnel reality you're in, and you can shift those, right? So once you shift the assemblage point, then the world shifts, and you can experience high strangeness or temporal distortion, right? And time dilation. All of those things are apparent in what we call the mystical moment. And that's what you train for. As a sorcerer, you train to make the shift in the assemblage point through the three worlds within the body, and then the greater world, the cosmos, the highest principle, right above even the celestial realms. Ordinary reality is not the world, but one's assembled version, right? Yeah, precisely. Changing perception requires moving the assemblage point. And one way to do this, there was a whole series of exercises given by Robert Anton Wilson in Prometheus Rising. And so to make those shifts in perception and make them persistent, you could train certain activities, right? Like we use Franz Barden's for internal visualization and magic and understanding the essential nature of magical alphabets, and then using deeper, the resonance of better musicality to encode those things in your ritual work. So for most people, to move the assemblage point, right, the critical factor, the guardian of the threshold, is that it's fixed and it guards the gate, and you can't go through the gates of the ordinary prime material plane into the realm of the astral and utilize the etheric, or into, the next realm, right? The celestial, because you're stuck in that single individual box that you've created around yourself, right? And it's stabilized by habit, language, social conditioning, and identity, and then reinforced daily by repetition and self-talk. So the key here is just to shift the repetition, right? Like, what is your daily repetition? What are those things you do? Do you get up and quiet sitting in the morning and deciphering the images from Dreamland, and then journaling and meditating, doing some meditation, and then some basic healthy calisthenics, and then some daily activity, like working a job or cooking and cleaning in the house, or whatever type of activity, domestic or business, that you have to do. So you increase the repetition of the best, most serviceable actions in doing those things. And then with the self-talk too, right? Because this is psychologically being programmed into us by the world around us oftentimes. And so you have to take command of that and think about thoughts that you heard, in your childhood or throughout life, or at certain places and jobs, or certain people who might try to diminish you, and just eliminate them near to 99%. In the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu says that the reason the man of Tao experiences no death is because he makes no death within himself, right? There's no place for death to enter, right? Why is the Shen immortal? Because there's no place for death to enter. Okay, so the first attention. This is the one we're going to look at first. Let's see here. The first attention. Now, breaking down the first attention, this I would use the sigil of the triangle with the eye inside it, right? The all-seeing eye of providence. And if you utilize this as the idea that things are assembling within the triangle of art, right? Within the mind's eye, as it were, then your command over it determines your magical power and ability. So the first attention corresponds to your everyday consciousness. It says its characteristics are logical, language-based, socially conditioned, function on linear time, and ego-centered identity. The me, my story, my problems type of thing. And you could also name it the critical factor, or the like the rational, observing, thinking, looking mind, right? The first attention, the one that's in the analog function. And it's limited, its attention span is limited to about 7 seconds of active memory, right? And then it's what's responsible, it assembles your understanding of, right, your brain's interpretation of the physical world, your personal history, cause and effect reasoning, and cultural identity, spiritual philosophy, all of the things that formulate your worldview, right, your paradigm. So Don Juan does not dismiss the first attention as necessary for survival, but he sees it as narrowing and self-reinforcing. Yeah. And then the second attention, okay, so this would be the conscious, right? This would be the consciousness. And it would also be in control of like analytical and creative functions and both sides of the mind, which they're not examining here. But then this was the analog function, and it connects and overwrites the digital function, the subconscious. What do they call the heightened awareness here? So the second attention arises when the assemblage point loosens and you go from like a spotlight view, right? The critical factor, the guardian at the threshold, would be like in memory if you're in a dark room and you turn on a spotlight. You have a very narrow, powerful beam of concentrated energy. That's the analogy you could use. And however you direct that light and form your sigils and write with it and point at it, you can also use different color rays, right? Like a lightsaber of the mind, so to speak. And then the second attention is the floodlight, like it lights up a sphere of energy, a plasma sphere. And so you're within the plasma sphere of energy, undulating and oscillating, right? And you perceive yourself as this thing within it, right? Within the world as the human being, but you're actually the attention all around it. And everything that forms in that attention around you is also a part of your energy expression. And really all of those same things have been there since the day you were born, the day you die. You're going to have exactly the same amount, right? The zero equation. You will start with zero and exit through zero, 2 gates. And beyond each gate is another entire journey, right? So that's good fun there. And supposedly the journey beyond is much longer than the journey here, if you do good magic while you're here. If not, you might come right back, right? And in worse conditions. But yeah, don't do that. This can happen. So the second attention or symbol point loosens or shifts, and this can happen. Intense emotion, dreaming, silence. Okay, so yeah, when you go to sleep, you fall into the subconscious mind. When you sit in deep, prolonged sessions of silence, when the mind actually stops talking, then you enter into that second attention. So the analog relaxes. And to get into hypnosis, you have to let go. You have to pass the guardian at the threshold, the first attention, and then move into the second attention with awareness still, right? That's what lucid dreaming is. And where are we at? We're still at the first attention on that page, right? Here we are, second attention. Very good. Yeah, so the second attention, heightened awareness. And you can shift into it from different other things, right? Like going to sleep and dreaming. I don't know if you guys have ever done pathworking meditations, but they're basically guided meditations along the paths in the Kabbalah, right? And they have lots of associations and imagery. And when you work through them, or the Neijing Tu, right? The internal alchemy of the Taoist system. And if you've ever practiced that and sunk into it, and it actually happens, like you go through the entire physical human body inwardly and discover that it's an entire organic sphere and tree, like a universe, with other homies hanging out like around the organs and stuff, and more than one celestial being utilizing your heavenly terrace, like your interaction with this human world from above. And wow, yeah, it's quite a thing. I won't discuss it, but I sat into a meditation one time, and maybe 5 to 10 minutes to relax my body and mind, and I was at like a very, very high point in the world expression, and I sank into a meditation that I thought would go about 15 minutes, basically like seated sleeping. We call it jingzuo, right? Quiet sitting. But 2 hours and 45 minutes passed like they passed in a single moment, right? And then I sat around for like another 30 minutes and enjoyed the space of the room and the amount of travel I had done inwardly, and went back through all of the things that had occurred in according to the first attention, right? The critical factor had only passed like within a few minutes of time, but then the second attention opened up, and I was able to see the vast distances that I had traveled in that period of time, and all of the things that had occurred, and condensed into a very short like time memory loop. So it's non-linear, non-temporal, direct knowing rather than explanation, symbolic or archetypical, and loss of rigid identity boundaries. In the second attention, you don't interpret reality, you encounter it. Yeah, and the encountering thing is based on your level of work, right? Your level of completion of the great work. You know, have you crossed the great abyss? Have you crossed it multiple times? Have you gone all the way up, you know, the tree of life through the various spheres and worked their pathways and experienced full rotations of the major arcana, and understand like the transition, right? Like if this is happening in the arcana, then what's to follow, right? What things naturally come after that numerologically and through the rotation of the other elements, right? The other lesser powers. So you see rather than look. Then there's the third attention. Okay, so placing these within the Dantian system, right? The third system, the total awareness, would be the infernal Dantian at the very bottom. And this would be the entire molecular structure, right? Like the fundamental atomic alignment of all of your material particles. Like, so all the way the fleshes and organs and bones and blood are growing and being manifest into the prime material plane, and you have no direct physical control, like cognitively, over like your flesh and how it's growing and what it looks like, and your bones and how they form and all of that, your brain and how it functions. So that's the lowest, deepest, most instinctual level of your awareness and your body. And then the middle Dantian would be in control of the second attention, the subconscious, the emotional energies, the organic energies within the body, right? These are suggestible to you. You can suggest to these. So you have no control at the very fundamental level, right? That most visceral level of the human body. And then you, like whether it grows old or not, or how quickly you recover from injury, right? And then you have the subconscious, which is open to suggestion. So you don't have direct control over it either, but it's within your area of influence. You can speak to it and interact with it, and it bridges the gap. It's the central Dantian, the terrestrial Dantian, and it bridges the gap between heaven and earth. It's the median, what connects the two, right? And then the first attention would be in the celestial Dantian, the seat of the throne of God, the terrestrial, celestial terrace that you come out on and view the world with your heavenly eyes. And then the third eye symbol as well, the triangle of art. And the incantation abracadabra, that would all be at the top Dantian. So let's see, third attention, total awareness, rarely discussed and intentionally vague. It represents complete freedom from fixed assemblage point and awareness without identity. Yeah, so it's at the molecular level, that third attention. Let's see, which page are we on here? Second attention. And why this matters. Okay, so perception without a perceiver, right? Like the third person omnipotent viewer of the thing. And it's associated with death, the ego, and dissolution of the personal self. And in the system of Tao, you do not dissolve and lose the personal self. In fact, it's the one thing you continue to take from lifetime to lifetime. It's not your memories and all of the other education and stuff, but it's your attitude, like your attitude and your personal being, who you are, right? Like the awareness of who you are through any lifetime and through any manifestation. It's the conscious thing superseding, pervading the material expression of it, right? That absolutely is fundamentally true, right? We come from nothing and go back into nothing through all the processes, and we do it so, right? It might be as a part of a system as well, right? Like the parents providing the biological matter, but it's the soul, the spirit of the thing that manifests into it and brings it into this world. Right, and that's something that is not limited temporaneously or spatially, for that matter. Why this matters psychologically and symbolically? Okay, so symbolically, the system maps cleanly onto habitual cognition, altered or expanded states of awareness, and relaxed awareness, right? Like the giving up of awareness, like the sleep state we talked about a moment ago. Ego dissolution or transcendence. And the assemblage point is essentially the organizing center of perception. Modern parallels include predictive processing in neuroscience, frame shifting in cognitive psychology, ego flexibility in depth psychology, and flow states and peak experiences. Yeah, one of the great things about learning Kung Fu, dance, and music, and if you're good at art or good at other things of that nature, right, any form of art, then you really get in the flow. Even sports, yeah, like, you know, people who get good at sports, you get into flow states and peak experiences, and these are when you're experiencing the high strangeness and the super sensual, the magical at that time. And when you get enough of those experiences, they build up. They start to create greater synchronicity. It says the key takeaway here is that reality is stable because attention is trained to keep it that way. Shift attention and the world reorganizes. Yeah, we've all known this at some level, right? That idea stripped of mythology is profoundly unsettling. Okay, so Malkuth and Yasad. Because the path is precisely where perception loosens systems, both Don Juan and Western Hermeticism begin with the same radical axiom. The world we experience is structured by perception, not discovered whole. Castaneda's assemblage point determines what the world is assembled as, right? In Hermetic Kabbalah, conscious ascends the tree by changing the mode of perception associated with each sephira. The tree is not a map, it's a map of awareness. Malkuth corresponds with the fixed assemblage point, almost exactly with the first attention. Characteristics include sensory reality, social roles, language, habit, routine, identity tied to body and biography. This is just how things are. This is where the assemblage point is. Don Juan would say the warrior begins in Malkuth without knowing it exists. Most people never leave. That's right. They do not. The sorcerer's task is to loosen the assemblage point, right? The critical factor, the fixed attention, and to move it into the subconscious realm. So a waking, dreaming, hypnotic state that's induced through magical practice. The sorcerer to him is not someone who controls reality, but who can move attention deliberately. Yeah, so when you can shift imagine the attention point as like the planchet on a Ouija board, and the energy egg around you and within you, all the spheres, all the balls of plasma that manifest, right? You can imagine the 3 charged balls of plasma within the human body. The Dantian as balls of plasma. The lower Dantian, a red, burning, orange, fiery ball of plasma. Then the central Dantian, like a refined state of pure golden energy, right? With a core lining of scintillating white, bright light. White flexing to gold, right? Shooting out from the central Dantian. And then the upper Dantian, a deep blue Stygian illuminated with stars, right? The actual astral realm, the celestial Dantian within that sphere, that ball of plasma within the mind. And so you have a great fiery sun, you know, at the central Dantian. And it can move. Each type of energy can shift to the other Dantian, so you can take the planchet of the mind, the triangle of art, and move it down into the lower Dantian to fire up all of the processes there and start burning the central cauldron, right, with its gaseous materials and its 5 solid and 6 hollow organs generating their various alchemical elixirs, and then commingling those and refining them in the cauldron. And then that rises up like gas throughout the entire body into the mind, particles of energy. You could imagine it like the sparks coming off of gaseous polychromatic clouds of smoke from that burning fiery energy down there. And the whole time you're refining a pill in the center of that cauldron, right? It's in a crucible, and it has all of the core elements that comprise the Philosopher's Stone in it. And as those sparks on the clouds of energy rise into the dark sky of the mind, they become stars. Yeah. And they come back down too. So the flow goes up into the microcosmic orbit and then down back into the center Dantian. And each breath, you can do an entire circulation of the microcosmic expansion, right? From as above, so below, down into the body and back up again to as above. We're going to learn the correspondence of it here. And how are we doing on time? Yeah, we got a couple of minutes left. This map, so in Castaneda's terms, the sorcerer is not someone who controls reality, but can move attention deliberately, right? And the sorcerer's task is to loosen the point. This activity maps directly onto the path of Tau, the lunar threshold leading toward Yesod. Interrupting automatic interpretation, silencing internal dialogue, withdrawing emotional investment from personal narratives, and cultivating observational awareness. This second one, silencing internal dialogue, when I was younger, like I always plexed on this in meditation because the mind seemed so active and loved to chitter chat. And I would sit and do the meditations and the breath work and stuff no matter what, but I was never able to slay the monkey mind. And then one day when I hit like, I don't know, like 42 or 43, it might have even been a little later. It might have been like 45 years old or something like that. I just woke up one day and the monkey mind had gone completely silent. Like it just shut up one day and never chattered again. Like I never had to listen to the reflections or echoes of anything from the world. I could just observe anything that appeared in the mind. And so if you say meditation takes a long time, like if with that example, if I started meditating diligently, trying to get the mind under control when I was probably about 15 years old, right? 15 or 16, it took 30 years to achieve it for me. Or that's just to say, when you hit your early to mid 40s, the monkey shuts up. Maybe that's true with everyone. I don't know. Did you guys have that experience? I would be curious to know because it was very interesting. Like there was just a complete silence had washed over the land and the monkey had disappeared in meditation. Like I could sit down in meditation and it just became immediately went to like 0 point energy and yeah, like into the Godhead immediately with no monkey hanging around. So that was pretty cool. Anyway, thought I'd share that with you about internal dialogue. If you're young and you battle with it, then just realize that at some point in life, that monkey's just going to leave and you won't even miss him. You won't miss him at all, man. You'd be like, c'est la vie. How interesting. In Hermetic terms, this is detaching consciousness from the density of Malkuth without rejecting it. Yesod, the second attention, the dreaming body. Yeah, and it directly corresponds, right? You can see how easily you can map across various magical traditions with all of the same information. And you see how it directly corresponds with the Chinese Dantian system as well. That's what I'm bringing. That's the value I'm adding here. Corresponds to the second attention. You saw the lunar dreaming logic, the imagination, symbolic perception, psychic sensitivity, emotional resonance, the astral body. Well, the astral body is formed of an intermediary material, actually. So your astral body is the deep core above, it's the expression, the reflected light of the soul immediately above that. So if we imagine them as concentric spheres within spheres, your core sphere would be your soul, and then the astral would manifest outside of that as the intermediary between the soul and the etheric. And the etheric is the programming level that's already bringing manifestation into the prime material plane. It would be the subatomic ionization of the particles as they come to express in Malkuth, right? Like the flesh energy, the actual direct manifestation of the thing. So the core level, the soul is guiding the transmission of the light, the reflected light, into an etheric, what people call the morphogenic field, right? Into that field to bring about the construction of what it looks like. So your manifestation in this prime material plane is a direct reflection of your soul, like it or not. Hopefully you can come to terms with that, but that's just a fact. A spiritual fact. Maybe the first time it was revealed to you here in this domain. In Castaneda's system, the second attention operates through dreaming and through deep meditation and path working as well. I would add that here. Perception becomes imaginal, fluid, and symbolic. Meaning is apprehended directly, not reasoned. Just like in dreaming, when you're going through dreaming, everything you encounter is immediately real and apparent and immediately experienced and forgotten. And you go through much more material and more rapidly than you do in your physical life, right? With the analog attention. Once the analog attention is relaxed and you're able to just process everything at light speed, then that's why people forget so much, because you can't even work through 1 second of that experience could take up 3 years of conversation in this realm in describing it and its reality, right? So that's why the knowing would laugh, right? When we talk and when we write things down. This is exactly Usad's domain. In both systems, reality becomes plastic. Images speak before words, and identity softens. Time becomes non-linear. And space becomes non-Euclidean, right? Everybody knows that. You've been over there, you know, Wayfarer. So path working. Path working is the controlled movement of the critical factor or the assemblage point. Hermetic path working functions as a ritualized, safe method for what Don Juan describes more harshly. So Castaneda says, moving the assemblage point, the Hermetic equivalent might be rising in consciousness, or moving your attention, moving the critical factor through the levels of consciousness and arriving at higher, more self-actualizing, self-mastery levels of consciousness. Dreaming would correspond with astral travel and imagination. Seeing corresponds with symbolic gnosis. Yeah, so that's what we'll do in the first cycle of the 100-day challenge, the first third of the 3/3. Seeing, and then stopping the world is crossing the veil. Impeccability is magical discipline. And then path working. Next, we shall get into path working. Let's see. Did that work? No. Say boop. Boop. Yeah, path working. So path working is essentially training the mind to enter the second attention without losing coherence, or to go from the waking state into the dreaming state and transfer over consciousness. But even more importantly, especially if it's throughout the evening, is going from the dreaming state into the conscious state and retaining a lot of what you saw there. That's the guardian at the gate that stands at the threshold, right? The lurker at the threshold that steals the memories from you of your adventures in Dreamland as you come back into this world. And so bridging that gap and using a memory palace system to bring more of that back is so-called seizing the golden coin, right? Or closing your hand and making a gold coin manifest in it. That's one of the first challenges of the magician in Dreamland. Don Juan repeatedly warns that uncontrolled movement leads to madness. Hermeticism answers this with ritual structure, symbolic containment, ethical grounding, and gradual ascent. And any good system will do this. They'll move through gradual ascent, right? And incremental change. The sorcerer versus the magician. An important distinction could be made between Don Juan's sorcerer and the Hermetic magician. Sorcerers emphasize freedom from fixation. Magicians emphasize balance and integration. And I would say that a Taoist also emphasizes, a Taoist magician, harmony and balance and integration. Yeah. Well, balance is a kind of harmony, right? At Malkuth to Yasad, they're doing the same work, learning to see the imaginal layer beneath the physical, understanding that matter is the crystallization of symbols, and discovering that attention is creative. Yeah, absolutely. The danger in both systems, escaping into fantasy. Right, don't get too close to my fantasy. Don't be afraid to touch the hand of your creator. Stare into the lion's eyes, and if you taste the candy, you'll get to the surprise. Inflating the ego, confusing symbolic truth with literal belief. Hence, the insistence on discipline, practical synthesis. Next section. Conceptual, not ritual. Applied psychologically. This transition involves developing a dreaming awareness, observing emotional patterns without judgment, practicing visualization without attachment, and learning to hold symbols without explaining them away. In Castaneda's language, you learn to see energy before naming it. In Hermetic language, you learn to receive the lunar images without becoming lost in them. Yeah, what is the definitive tarot card for getting lost in the lunar images? Do you know, Wayfarer? If you know the reference here, right? Becoming lost in lunar images. Which tarot card represents that? Minor Arcana. Put it in the comment section below if you catch the reference. If you've listened this far, you've done well, Wayfarer. We're about to finish up here. We've got 8, and I believe that's it for this section. Then we'll call it a day, because it's been a long day. I've been talking for already close to 2 hours. That's quite a thing. Let me see here. Yeah, wow, 2 hours right now, guys. Where did we leave off? Number 8, why the path matters. Malkuth to Yasad. It's the first true initiation in both systems. And it is the realization that this world is not solid, identity is not fixed, perception can be trained, and meaning precedes form. Only after this can one ascend further toward Tifereth, the integrated self. The final synthesis is the sorcerer, Don Juan, and a hermetic magician would agree on this point. You can change the world, but you must learn how to assemble it, or learn how it is assembled. Malkuth teaches you what you see. Yasad teaches you how you see it. Yeah, that makes sense, right? And the movement between them is the beginning of real freedom. So to summarize, you can move from Malkuth, Tifereth, and then Malkuth to Yasad, Yasad to Tifereth, and then to Keter, and you can get real freedom. And yeah, that's the only way I know how to do it, man. It's good magic. I think we finished just at the right time. We're looking at 2 hours right now, so I will I'll give the station update here, as it were. Good looking out, y'all. I appreciate you stopping by. Thanks for hanging out, doing a little study session with Frank Monday here on the FM radio channel. The upcoming 100-day challenge in March is going to be Sorcery of the Ancients. So get ready to experience that in the future. And then like and subscribe so you can keep updated. And all material corresponding to Sorcery of the Ancients, the new 100-day challenge, you can find on buymeacoffee.com/Frank Monday. And yeah, put a little something in the tip jar. That never hurt anybody, right? $50 never killed anybody. Get it done. I appreciate y'all good-looking sexy people for stopping by and joining in. Keep doing good magic, and I will see you in the abodes of the future. Until then, carpe diem.